All right, my draft time. And Coop, I'm going to let you start because you have only nice things to say. And even the things that aren't so nice will be nice compared to whatever Rick's about to say. So you can go with a player you liked, a player you thought was too high, one that's on not on the list it should be, or any direction you want. The floor is yours, my friend.
I'll go with a pick that I liked. I'm going to go with Luther Burden at 18 to Los Angeles Chargers with Jim Harbaugh. We like this kid coming out. I think he was a number 2 receiver in 2022 behind Evan Stewart now with Oregon. And, the way that he plays, the way that Eli Drinkowitz kind of utilizes him, this was kind of like the big first NIL victory for Missouri. And it's kind of helped kind of like catapult that program to recruiting at a high level. But I like this kid. I like the demeanor at the catch point. I like the demeanor as a run after catch receiver that utilize him primarily out of the slot. I think you can do a lot of different things with him. Pair him up with a guy like Lad McConkey. I think they've been trying to get the temperament of that room right for a while. They haven't been able to do that. But I like this kid. I like everything he's about. I like the way he's wired. He's really, like you talk about a guy with some stuff in his neck. That is Luther Burden. So him at 18 is a pick that I like a lot.
So I've had Tedero McMillan as my wide receiver 1 coming out of the summer, and Luther's number 2. How do you feel about that? Do you like Luther a little better than T-Mac?
No, I think you're on it there. What was funny about T-Mac coming out of Servite, where he played with Noah Fafita, his quarterback, was this guy was a two-way player playing in a very competitive league there in California, maybe one of the best in the country. Was also a very skilled volleyball player as well. And those two were attached at the hip. The ball skills, the ability to adjust, the ability to win 50-50 balls consistently. I mean, he turned those into 90-10 balls at the high school level. The only really question we had about him was his speed. He was a long, fluid athlete, and the body type was a little bit slender. Now you watch him his first 2 years at Arizona, he's kind of answered all those questions. So I think for me, yeah, personally, maybe we had some questions about the speed. We probably overvalued that in the evaluation process a little bit. Luther was a guy that checked all those boxes, but Tetaroa is the guy ultimately at the end of the day that I probably feel more comfortable with. But no, I don't think you're off base there at all.
I had Tedero going 15th to the Steelers, Rick, if you can believe that. I should also note that I had 5 quarterbacks going, which is on the high side. I think the over-under, I think you said 3 is the over-under, and I think that's closer to the truth. But I wanted to get some names in there so I could get ahead of the curve. Cam Ward and your guy, Connor Weckman, I think you like him a little more than I do. But what do you want to talk about first, Rick? What's on your mind?
I'll just say the pick I like the most.
Let's hear this.
We're all rainbows and butterflies and unicorns on this show.
Yeah.
I'm going with Will Johnson because you took him to the Commanders. And I think he's the most complete corner that I've seen in a while come out in this draft. And I understand we're talking about today and team needs can change, but the Commanders, in order for Dan Quinn's defense to go, he needs some shutdown corners like Diggs, like Bland turned out to be. Yeah. They had Gilmore last year. So to me, this is a no-brainer. They lost Kendall Fuller. They drafted Mike Sanderstill from Michigan last year, but he's just a nick. And right now, they're starting corners of St. Juice, Michael Davis, who they signed from the Chargers, and Emmanuel Forbes, who has had his struggles because he weighs 135 pounds.
He gained 10 pounds. He's a 145 now.
Okay. So my favorite pick that you made in this mock, which was very hard, spent hours and hours studying this.
Thank you.
Was Will Johnson when you send him to the Commanders.
Hey, Coop, let me ask you about Will Johnson, because I had him number 1 on my big board, and I think Rick likes Mason Graham. If I held the gun to his head and made him pick, he would take Mason Graham first on his big board that doesn't exist. A cornerback's never gone first overall. Where are you on Will Johnson in terms of the athleticism, in terms of the athlete, and how he sort of ranks in this class?
He was a really tough eval coming out because we didn't have a ton of information on him. And, when we're projecting players 4 to 5 years down the line, it's an information game. So everything that you can collect from a multi-sport participation standpoint from what they do in track and field, Will Johnson was not one of those guys. And he was a really highly touted recruit coming out. That's one of those things where you got to balance kind of where everybody else sees him and kind of sort through that and try to figure it out. The 2 biggest misses that we'll end up having in this class, if you want to call it, that would be McMillan, who we just talked about, and will be Will Johnson. We have both those guys at 38 and 40. So the top first 10 picks outside of the first round. So we weren't that far off, but those were guys that we didn't have all the information on, especially when it came to speed, trying to figure that out. But he was always a super instinctive player that we really, really liked a lot. And watching the tape on him, I mean, if there's one knock, and Rick, you might roll your eyes here, but maybe a little bit of the burst to close and the recovery speed, playing, the deep third of the field, turn on the tape against Marvin Harrison. I mean, I think this guy's done some extraordinary things. Go back, watch it against Adunze, one of the best in the country. So I think technically sound, maybe in my mind, like when I think about, all right, who to compare him to just in terms of high floor ceiling players, guys that you would kind of put in that safe category would maybe be somebody like Pat Surtain, is kind of what I think about a little bit. So no, incredible player. And he's been very, very well coached in Michigan as well.
Rick, Patrick Surtain was my comp. What do you think? What's going on here?
Well, you and Coop had a private meeting, a coup meeting without me in there. Mine was Christian Gonzalez because of the length and the movement skills.
Yeah, and actually, I think I told you don't care, but I'll let Coop know. I talked to some scouts that thought that Christian moved a little better than Will did, in terms of the short air quickness stuff and the fluid hips or whatever we call it these days.